The courtroom was a crucible, its air thick with anticipation and the faint hum of live broadcasts. Marble walls gleamed under harsh lights, reflecting the faces of a nation glued to screens from coast to coast. At the center of it all stood Vice President J.D. Vance, his posture steady, his eyes carrying a quiet storm. Across from him, Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett sat at the bench, her usual composure fraying at the edges. The gavel struck the desk, sharp, final, and the room froze. This wasn't supposed to happen. America had been watching for days, expecting a routine hearing over classified intelligence disputes. But no one anticipated this. Barrett, a pillar of judicial restraint, rising from her seat, her voice trembling with a rare break in protocol. "Vice President Vance," she said, her words slicing through the murmurs, "this court possesses documents suggesting you knowingly withheld classified intelligence from this body." Gasps erupted. Reporters fumbled pens, their notebooks forgotten. In the gallery, former President Donald Trump watched silently, his expression unreadable. The cameras, relentless, zoomed in on Vance. He didn't flinch. His hands, folded neatly on the table, betrayed no panic. Instead, a calm settled over him, the kind that whispered, "I know something you don't." He raised his head, his eyes glistening not with fear, but with a sorrow that seemed to carry the weight of years. "Your Honor," he said softly, his voice catching the room like a hook, "if I answer your charge truthfully, it won't just change this trial. It will change the entire country." The silence was deafening. America leaned in, holding its breath. Vance didn't speak immediately. He reached into his coat pocket, slow and deliberate, pulling out a yellowed letter, its edges worn as if it had been carried through too many sleepless nights. He held it up, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. "This," he said, his voice breaking, "was written by a mother who died believing justice had forgotten her." A tear rolled down the cheek of a woman in the audience. Barrett blinked, caught off guard. Vance continued, his words measured but heavy. "Her name was Lena Harris, from southern Ohio. She lost her son, Private Matthew Harris, in what was ruled a classified operation failure. But it wasn't a failure, it was a cover-up. A lie, Justice Barrett, signed by your hand." The room stilled. Barrett's face drained of color, her lips parting but no sound escaping. A whisper from the back broke the silence. "Oh my God." Vance placed the letter on the bench, gentle as if it were sacred. "I know because I was handed the redacted file by mistake," he said. "I kept it, not to protect myself, but to preserve the only piece of truth left for that mother. She begged me before she passed to find the person responsible." I did. Barrett's hands trembled, though she clenched them to hide it. She glanced at the letter, then at the cameras, then back at Vance. "This is absurd," she said, her voice straining for authority. "Private military records are sealed for a reason. You're twisting the truth." Vance didn't waver. He walked to the evidence table, opening a thin leather folder. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone, Your Honor," he said, "but I won't stand silent while truth is buried beneath prestige." He pulled out a photograph, grainy, taken from a distance but unmistakable. Barrett, standing beside a private contractor, the same one named in the cover-up documents. "This man," Vance said, "was paid $3.2 million in hush money under a fund you authorized. Do you deny knowing him?" Barrett's lips moved, but no sound came. A juror whispered, "She knows." Vance's gaze softened, not with triumph, but with sorrow. I admired you, he said. Barrett whispered, almost inaudibly, "You don't know what you're doing." His reply cut like a blade. "No, ma'am. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm keeping a promise to a grieving mother." The courtroom doors creaked open, and every head turned. A woman in her late 70s stepped inside, dressed in a bright red coat, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. Her eyes, tired but fierce, scanned the room. She leaned on a cane, each step deliberate. Vance paused mid-sentence and stepped aside. "This," he said softly, "is Eleanor Harris, Matthew's grandmother." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eleanor reached the witness box, her voice steady despite her age. "My daughter died of heartbreak," she said, her words carrying the weight of a lifetime. "I've waited too long to see someone speak up for Matthew." She turned to Barrett, her gaze unyielding. "My grandson was kind. He joined the army to pay for college. He believed in this country. But someone decided he was disposable. You signed away his life, then buried the truth so deep no one could find it. But this man," she gestured to Vance, "he dug it up." Tears fell in the audience. A juror wiped her eyes. Vance placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder, and for a moment America saw not a politician, but a man who carried a family's pain as his own. Barrett shifted, her voice sharp but unsteady. "You have no authority to launch a federal inquiry, Mr. Vance. This is political theater." Vance didn't blink. He walked to a recorder on the table and pressed play. Barrett's voice filled the room, clear and chilling. "If the mother pushes too hard, we'll release a statement claiming her son violated protocol. It'll kill the story before it begins." The room erupted, reporters gasping, jurors stunned. Barrett turned white. "Where did you get that?" she demanded. "From your former assistant," Vance said quietly. "She came forward when her conscience couldn't bear the weight." He faced the judge. "Your Honor, you abused your power to protect a secret. You destroyed a family's closure. The country deserves to know what else you've buried." Barrett sat, staring at the floor, her silence louder than any defense. Outside, crowds gathered, not in anger, but in hope. Vance handed a sealed folder to the bailiff, labeled "Top Secret, Declassified by Executive Order." The judge, a respected federal magistrate, examined it with wide eyes. "Where did this come from?" he asked. "The National Archives," Vance said. "Unsealed this morning by President Trump after I requested a review under the Fallen Soldier Transparency Act." The courtroom buzzed. Barrett's eyes widened. She knew what was inside. "This folder," Vance continued, "contains transcripts, covert communications, and financial transfers showing Justice Barrett protected a defense contractor from prosecution in exchange for influence and donations, including to a foundation tied to her husband." Barrett stood abruptly. "This is political warfare," Vance's voice remained calm. "No, ma'am, this is justice." He turned to the cameras. "To every family who felt ignored by the system that promised to protect them, this is for you." Veterans gathered outside, some in uniform holding photos of fallen loved ones. The nation stirred, waking to a truth it hadn't dared face. That evening, Vance stepped outside the courthouse, reporters swarming. He didn't speak of Barrett. Instead, he shared a story. "When I was a boy," he said, "I saw my mom cry over a folded flag, not because she lost someone, but because her best friend did. She said, 'They give us flags when they don't want to give us answers.' That's why I'm here, because some answers were buried too deep, and too many gave up digging." I didn't. Reporters fell silent, even the cynics moved. A woman watching from Kansas, whose son died in a classified mission, wept and whispered to her husband, "He's fighting for us." Vance's final words lingered. "I didn't come to win a political battle. I came to win back trust." The next morning, court resumed, and the first witness changed everything. Margaret Olson, a quiet woman in her 50s, stepped forward, her hands trembling. "My husband was a Defense Department analyst," she said. "He died of a heart attack months ago. Before he passed, he told me to give this to someone I could trust." She handed Vance a flash drive. On it, surveillance logs. A security tape played. Barrett in a private D.C. restaurant warning the contractor, "Leaks will destroy both our futures." Barrett's face turned ghostly. Margaret looked at Vance. "My husband said you were different." Vance's voice broke. "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am," she nodded. "He said you'd do what he couldn't." The judge dimmed the lights. Vance approached the bench. "With your permission, I'd like to play a 1-minute clip from this footage." The screen flickered. Barrett's voice, low but clear. "Make sure that mother never gets the real file. One headline, and I lose everything." A woman sobbed in the front row. Vance stepped back. "That mother was Lena Harris. She's gone now, but the truth she prayed for just spoke louder than any of us could." Barrett stood, shaking. "Objection! This is out of context." But it was too late. The courtroom knew. America knew. This wasn't politics. It was betrayal. A man in a military jacket, a silver star pinned to his chest, stood in the gallery. "I served with Matthew Harris," he said, his voice gravelly. "He died because someone ordered a last-minute mission change, a change we were told came from above, from the court." Barrett's jaw clenched. "I held Matthew's hand as he bled out. He kept whispering, 'Tell my mom I didn't mess up. Tell her it wasn't my fault.'" Tears fell openly. A reporter lowered her camera to wipe her eyes. Vance nodded. "Can you confirm this log of the mission change?" he asked, holding a document. The soldier's voice broke. "That's it. That's the order that got him killed." Barrett slumped. The judge, shaken, called a break. Vance stayed behind, pulling a folded letter from his briefcase. "This is from Eleanor Harris, Matthew's grandmother, written days before she passed," he said. He read, aloud, "To America, you don't know me, but you know people like me, mothers, grandmothers, who trust this country with our children. My grandson believed in you, but you didn't protect him. Truth is not revenge, it's healing. If you read this, I hope you're brave enough to tell the truth, even if it costs you everything." The judge wiped his eyes. The room wept. Vance folded the letter. In that moment, he wasn't a vice president. He was a man honoring a promise. When court resumed, Barrett looked broken. Her confident posture was gone, her face pale. She stood, her voice trembling. "I thought I could live with it," she whispered. "I told myself the mission was a success, that the details didn't matter, but they did." Tears fell. "I swapped the names. I knew my nephew wasn't trained for that mission. I panicked, used my clearance to change the roster. I thought it would be harmless. I didn't know Matthew would take his place. I told myself I'd fix it, cover the trail, but there was too much to lose, so I ran from it." The courtroom sat stunned. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but it wasn't enough. Across the country, families wept, wishing someone had spoken sooner. Vance requested one final item, a plain wooden chair placed beside the witness stand. "This was Matthew Harris's kitchen chair," he said. "His grandmother gave it to me. He never got to defend himself, so we'll give him his seat." The chair stayed, and every witness turned toward it, as if Matthew were listening. Barrett couldn't look at it, her eyes filling with tears. A boy, about 11, stepped into the courtroom, nervous, holding a small medal on a worn ribbon. "Can I give this to the Vice President?" he asked the judge. Vance turned, surprised. The boy stretched out his hand. "My dad died in Iraq. This was his. I watched this trial all week. I wanted to give it to you because you fought for a soldier when no one else did." Vance knelt, taking the medal like it was glass. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Caleb," the boy whispered. Vance hugged him, and every camera caught it. That night, the image, a grieving boy and a vice president who knelt to honor him, became a symbol of dignity. The jury returned early, their decision swift. "We find Justice Barrett's actions morally negligent and politically deceitful," the foreman said. "We recommend immediate resignation and congressional review." Barrett nodded, whispering, "I understand." The juror turned to Vance. "To you, Mr. Vice President, we say thank you." The room rose, clapping not in triumph, but in reverence. Vance looked at the empty chair, then the cameras. "This was never about winning. It was about honoring a promise to a soldier, a mother, a family, and a nation that deserved the truth." That evening, a sealed envelope arrived at the Capitol, hand-delivered by Barrett's assistant. Inside, 2 sentences. "To the people of the United States, I resign from my post as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, effective immediately." Amy Coney Barrett's social media erupted, but Vance didn't celebrate. He asked the press to respect the Harris family's privacy. "This moment belongs to them," he said. Outside their home, hundreds left flowers and candles. One note read, "Because of J.D., the truth won." Barrett's fall wasn't Vance's victory, it was Matthew's. That night, Vance sat alone, holding Caleb's medal, whispering, "We didn't win. We made it right." The next morning, in a Cincinnati school, 5th graders gathered around a screen. Their teacher, Mrs. Henley, had shown trial clips all week, not for politics, but for its message. She wrote "honor" on the whiteboard. "What does it mean?" she asked. A girl raised her hand. "Telling the truth, even if it's hard." Mrs. Henley teared up. "Who showed us that?" The class answered in unison. "Vice President Vance." A photo of Matthew Harris, smiling in uniform, hung beside the American flag. Below it, a note from the children. "You are not forgotten." Vance, watching a clip of this later, covered his face and wept, not for politics, but because the truth had reached the next generation. At the Lincoln Memorial, under a gentle mist, Vance addressed the nation. Flanked by flags, he placed Matthew's photo on the podium. "6 days ago, I entered a courtroom to answer an accusation," he said. "What I uncovered was about all of us." His voice broke. "If we're to heal, it starts with honoring those we lost. Not with silence, but with action." The crowd didn't cheer. One by one, they knelt. Veterans, mothers, children, not in protest, but in honor. Vance knelt too, not as vice president, but as a citizen. Caleb, in the front row, raised a hand over his heart. The moment swept America, people kneeling in small towns and cities, feeling something worth kneeling for. In Ohio, at the Harris family home, Vance placed Caleb's medal on their mantel, beside Matthew's flag. "This belongs here," he whispered. with those who taught us honor. David Harris, Matthew's father, wept. Your son changed this country, Vance said. You gave him a voice when he had none. Outside, neighbors lit candles, the block glowing like stars. Vance hadn't planned to be a hero. He couldn't walk away from a promise. He didn't just expose corruption, he redefined courage. Congress passed the Harris Act, mandating transparency for fallen soldiers' missions, signed without debate. At Arlington, a memorial flame was approved, its plaque reading, "To the soldier whose truth was buried until one man spoke it." Vance lit the flame, David Harris at his side, as taps played. Caleb, Mrs. Henley, and Susan the nurse stood quietly. No crowds, just family. Vance placed Matthew's letter beneath the flame. I kept my promise, he whispered, weeping fully. It wasn't about revenge, it was remembrance. Back home, Vance hugged his children, his youngest holding a sign. Welcome home, Daddy. We're proud. He knelt, whispering, I just wanted to make the world safer for you. In his journal, he wrote, Let the story begin with every child who believes truth, no matter the cost, is how nations rise. I left the courtroom defending something greater. The story didn't end. A mother tucked her child in with hope. A veteran slept without nightmares. And Matthew Harris, remembered, lived on in a nation that almost moved on too fast.